speaker, Corey, not to announce him this way. Not to put the hype and the flavor in it, but I'm going to tell you, I've been to a Greensberg meeting, and they've got recovery there. Yeah, don't they? They've got some spirit there. And I know that when you add that spirit to our spirit, what you got is a quadruple effect of spirit. So I can imagine what we're going to hear is some pretty cool stuff. And I want you to know that he might shed a tear. So you guys, in leaving the 99, you leave him alone. And if he needs to cry on the front line, you let him go. But we're going to record this. And there is nothing greater than when we find brothers from other towns that we've never met before, we never talked to, but they say hello and you know everything about them. And when you meet this man, and in a couple weeks you're going to meet his wife because she's going to give her testimony about how bad his was. We're going to have a whole family discrepancy here after this. But I want you see what you're getting yourself into. Corey, come up here and show us what we're about. Take your time.
How much cord do I got? Because I don't like being stationary. I was locked up too long, so I got to move free and be free to roam. Well, my name's Corey. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. And thanks to Jesus Christ, I have been, I don't want to say redeemed, because I don't know that I'm ever going to be 100% perfect. But I am recalled into the life of Christ. Well, I guess I'll just jump right into it. I've seen a lot of people do their testimonies, and I had a hard time figuring out how to do mine or thinking about how to do mine, and I guess I'm not going to go and do what other people have done. I'll just do my own thing. The first memory that I've got in my life was when I was 5 years old. My mom had been beaten like. It was pretty bad. She had like 23 staples in her head, broken jaw, broken cheekbone, 2 black eyes, the whole works. And she was in the hospital for about 2 weeks. The guy that did it, his name was Gennaro. I don't have any memory of what Gennaro looks like. But about 2 weeks later, when she got out of the hospital, we were at the house. And I remember the house very specifically. It was a yellow duplex, upstairs, downstairs, our rooms upstairs. And we were told that if he showed back up, but we needed to run next door and call 911 because we didn't know what he was going to do, and she didn't want us in the house in case he did come there. Because if he was coming there, he was coming for blood. He was coming for good. Well, sure as the night, he shows up, kicks in the door, wow. And I remember everybody just going crazy, everybody freaking out. My brothers were screaming. They ran next door and they took off. And at 5 years old, you don't really think about like getting hurt, and you don't think about, pain or consequences or anything like that. So the only thing that I could think of was, I got to help mommy. So both my brothers ran next door and called 911. I ran in the kitchen and stood in front of my mom and asked Gennaro to not hurt my mommy. And my mom will tell you to this day that she was looking in his face when I said that, and it was like something changed. Something immediately just came in front of his face. So that was the first miracle I ever witnessed in my life as 5 years old. So, but I never saw it as a miracle, I never saw it as a miracle. I just, it was one of those things. It was like, oh man, I had to watch my mom get beat up all the time when I was a kid. This is the reason why I am this way, and it was all kind of, all led up into that. And there was a lot of Gennaros over the years. There was a lot of, there was a lot of times I had to watch my mom get beat up, and a lot of times that I had to call the police. No, there was a lot of times that I was the only one there to help. A lot of times there wasn't nothing I could do. I remember on one occasion there was a guy named John Stevenson. He cut his wrist right in front of me. He was. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody in a rage when they're like, oh, I'm going to lose you, and then they get crazy and they're like, oh, I'm going to kill myself just to make you feel bad. So he did that right in front of me. I was 9. Well, I mean, my my story kind of jumps around a lot, because I don't have fluid memories. Maybe that's the drugs. So the first cool thing I can remember happening when I was a kid, when I was 7 years old, I was actually going to go get to see my dad for visit my dad in a foreign country. He lived in Stuttgart, Germany. He was stationed over there. So I was like, man, this is awesome. I went and got my passport. I got on a plane, and the first thing I can remember doing over there was going to the PX with my dad, and there was this cool little figurine. It was a little basketball player. Do I like basketball? No, but I thought it was cool. You know what I mean? So I was like, Dad, will you buy this for me? I think it was like $20, and it didn't even do anything. It didn't move. The arm was just stayed there. It was just stuck in this position. So it wasn't even that cool of a toy. I couldn't make it do anything. But for some reason, I had to have it. He told me no, obviously, and I can remember going into his room and then seeing a stack of $20 bills on his dresser. I was like, man, that's a lot of 20s. And as, in a 7-year-old's mind, I got to miss one, right? So I take that $20 bill, not thinking about the consequences of I think he's going to see this 1.5 foot tall statue that doesn't do anything. And what am I going to do when he finds it? Be like, oh, I found it. But he found it. I think he noticed the money got missing, and it was like, where'd that money go? I don't know. So I think that one stuck with me. That was one of my things when I was growing up, is I was a little thief. I liked to steal stuff. I mostly would just be from my dad, and I'd go snooping through his things, and he never let me play his guitars, so I would always go in his room when he'd go to work, and I'd steal his guitar and play his guitar, because I was cool, I wanted to be cool just like my dad, but I never could. I always fell short of that mark, in my eyes anyway. My dad was perfect. My dad could never do anything wrong in my eyes, because he'd never broken the law on purpose. He'd never done a drug on purpose. He ate a bunch of brownies at a party once, but he says that was a terrible experience, and he didn't mean to. And he says, oh, it was terrible. I said, Dad, if you'd just ate one, you might have had a good time, but you ate 12. That was a bad idea. So, in my eyes, that story's just kind of leading into something. I could never be like my dad, And by the time I was 10, I was already having the cops called on me in the trailer park. Yeah, the trailer park. Anyway, Connorsville. Have you ever been to Connorsville, anybody? Elephant Hill. Yeah, that's where I lived at, Elephant Hill Trailer Park. And it was just as bad then as it is today. We were shooting windows out of trailers, stealing car stereos out of cars, and I was 10. The cops would come to the house, and my mom will lie to this day and tell you that she never said this, but she would always be like, Corey, you got to tell them it was you, because you can't go to jail yet. My mom, as a 10-year-old, your mom making you become a felon. It's a felony, So they would come to the house, and they would always come there anyway. It was the same cop. It was Dan Becker. It was the same cop every time, because it was the same cop that would come when she'd get beat up, and it was the same cop that would come when we would do things bad. So he knew our family pretty well. Well, about 12 rolls around. I didn't know if I was going to add this, but in 1999, I went and stayed with my dad in Colorado Springs, and I can remember the apartment complex that we lived in, and there was a Mexican family that lived on the other side of the complex, and his dad made these model airplanes, and they were RC airplanes, and they were really cool, and I thought it was awesome. But when I hung out with him, what his son had in store was not awesome. He began to sexually molest me as a child. So, that was kind of was kind of a turning point, I think, for me. I started getting in real bad trouble at school, cussing my teachers out, lying to the teachers, lying to people, lying to them about where I was from and things that had happened in my life and things that I've done and things that I could do, all to become this person that I wanted to be, or to have the type of friends that I wanted to have, but it never really worked out. My dad was in the Army. My mom was here, so I went back and forth between here and there, and so it was really hard to, land somebody who was like, yeah, man, I like that guy, because they never really knew who that guy was, except for who I was trying to portray that I was. So, my mom went to prison when I was about 12. I had a best friend growing up. It was the only friend that I can ever remember having for a long period of time. Her name was Tisha Magana. Her and her sister, Alex Magana. They were my friends from the time I was 3 until about the time I was 12, when I moved to Colorado for good to live with my dad. Their mom and my mom were best friends, so obviously we were really good friends. My mom stole her tax check, cashed it, so they put her in prison. I mean, it's crazy how the cycle of addiction and the cycle of doing things without even thinking or realizing how many people you're going to hurt. It's crazy. So when she went to prison, I had to come here and live with my dad, obviously, or go to Colorado and live with my dad, obviously. And the whole time I lived with my dad, it was like we lived in the same house, but we could go for weeks without talking to each other. It was like we never had a relationship to begin with, and we were trying to make these two almost adults live with each other. It wasn't working, and like I said, I never saw that I could be the same as him in my eyes or live up to his standards in my eyes. So 6th grade, I got expelled for bringing a knife to school because I thought I was going to get jumped by some kids. 7th grade, I got expelled from school for harassment that happened in the principal's office. 8th grade, I got expelled from school for getting into a fight in the principal's office and in the hallway on my way out from being suspended. So I got banned for life from public school in 8th grade. They said, don't you ever come back. So I had to go to alternative schools from then on. And I really wasn't that bad of a kid. I just didn't have any friends. Nobody really liked me, So everybody was always constantly testing the waters with me, and I'm not one to be poked. Never was. And if you combine somebody with somebody who was never afraid of anything with a desperate position, it's kind of dangerous. So, I really was never a bad kid. So when I went to these schools with a bunch of kids who really were bad news, that was bad news. It made me worse. So my stealing stuff would get worse. I can remember one specific thing that was just, when I look back now, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really did that. There was a museum on my dad's military battalion. It was just like this cool, it's like a mannequin. It was all dressed up in MP gear, just like my dad, because my dad was an MP. And I was like, man, that thing is freaking cool. And I love guns because I'm a boy. And what boy doesn't love guns or anything dangerous, So it had this little Daisy BB gun on its hip. It was like, just, the ones you pull back and then you push forward. And just, it didn't do much, but I seen it. So I had to have it. So I went to my dad's work a lot after school because pretty much I had to check in because I was always a bad kid, So on my way home from there, I stopped by the battalion, go through that little museum thing. I was kind of hanging out, and I grab it. Well, as soon as my dad heard that it wasn't there, he knew it was me. It wasn't like, gee, I wonder who could have done it. Oh, it's cool. No, it was like, I'm going home. I'll be right back because I'm going to go get it. He came to the house. Oh, it was bad news. I was already on probation by that point, and I went to jail. I had 27 arrests before I was 18 years old. 27 arrests. It's insane. When I was 17, they gave me my last chance. They were like, all right, this is it. You're going to go to a group home until you're 18 or until the day you get your GED. Whichever comes first, we don't care. It was 3 months before I turned 18. So I was like, all right, I can do this. Not. Went in there. About 2 weeks later, I was like, I've had enough. Took off. And they don't follow you there. You know, they're like, yeah, he's gone. Go get him. I didn't last, I think I was out 3 weeks. They caught up with me. Went to jail for 2 years. August 15th, 2005 to July 9th, 2007. When I was released, it was like, I went through all this drug training and all this, the emotion training and when I was in jail, and it was just like, it's easy when you're in there to walk the walk. When you get out, you really gotta hustle if you're really gonna make it. You really gotta put feet to the pavement if you're really gonna make it. I really never was a foot to a pavement kind of dude, you know what I mean? I was always burning rubber. I was always going way too fast for that news. So I did good for a minute, And then, my big thing about not having friends my whole life caught up with me again. I met up with some guys. They were going to rob this drug dealer, and they were planning it out. And I was like, man, these guys are cool. I want in. And I didn't know what they were going to do. I didn't know what all was going to happen. But they were like, well, we're just going to go in here and we're going to break in with these guns and we're going to tie him up and then we're going to take his drugs and we're going to leave. All right. Sounds cool. Well, it was all fun and games and all cool until the last of it. Till the day it was coming down to the grindstone. I couldn't go through with it. Because I know the look in somebody's eyes when they mean other business. I knew this guy had ill intentions for this other guy, and it's just not like, hey, we're going to go rob this drug dealer. We're going to get these drugs and this money. Let's go. It's like, we're going to go rob this dude. It's that killer eye he gave me. And I wasn't going to be a part of killing somebody or taking somebody's life. It was the last thing I'd never want to do. So I went to the police department. I kind of told them exactly what was going to go down, and they kind of showed up, guns drawn, SWAT team, dogs barking, and everything like that. And then they took everybody. They took us all. Well, my parole officer, he was on vacation, and thank God for that one. The director of the parole board was like, all right, we're going to grant you the ability to go to Cincinnati where your brother lives and work for him. If my parole officer would have been there, and he told me this after I left, he said, if I'd have been here, you'd be back in prison for 2 more years. So I got lucky. Went out to Cincinnati, was living with my brother, or was not living with my brother, but working with my brother. Everything was going good, and then he introduced me to cocaine. I really wasn't that into cocaine. Meth was my drug. I loved meth since I was 15. When my mom showed me, well, she didn't really mean to, but when my mom showed me, I loved it. So I went back to Colorado from Cincinnati because it just wasn't working for me there. And that's when it really got ugly. I was going from place to place to place to place, going a week, 2 weeks without sleep, a week, 2 weeks without eating. I got down to 145 pounds, if you can imagine that. I was little. And my dad was pretty concerned about me, so he asked me if I wanted to come stay with him in Utah. I was like, yes. I finally wanted to get off the drugs. I finally wanted to quit and finally wanted to be good. And then, so I went. Took me like 3 different cancellations of 3 different bus tickets to actually get on a bus to go, but you know how that works. You're trying to put off the inevitable and keep on getting high for a little bit longer. So I went out there, and I had a good mindset. I wanted to be sober, and I wanted to stay sober. I was like, yes, I'm actually finally going to be able to do this, because my dad's a good dude. My dad ain't like that. He's not going to let me be like that. As long as I'm under his roof, it'll be cool. My cousin Ashley gets a hold of me 2 days after I got there, which I'd pretty much done nothing but sleep the whole time I was there. So I was like, cool, somebody actually wants to see me. It didn't occur to me that it was 1:30 in the morning when she hit me up saying, hey, you want to go to Walmart and hang out? Sure, let's go. Went back to her house and was right back in it. Another 6 months down the drain. So I came to a turning point where I was just like, man, I don't want to die from this. I don't want this to be my forever. So I called my mom. She lived here, not here in Greensburg, but over in Greensburg. And I said, Mom, I need to get out of here. I'm real bad on drugs, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm homeless. I'm living in places, living in garages. I don't have nowhere to go. So she called my dad. My dad bought me a bus ticket. Again, took me 3 or 4 tries, but I got here. From October 11th, 2008 to December of 2014, I was sober from meth. So I thought I was doing good, right? Nah, wrong. I was doing pills, smoking weed, drinking, hallucinogens, anything else I could do other than meth, thinking it was cool. As long as I'm not doing that one I want to do, I'm gravy. But that ain't the case. Just like you said earlier. If you think that you're only getting off drugs, you're not. That's not the way to go. You need the Jesus. That's the last piece of the puzzle. So December rolls around, 2014. I was married to my ex-wife. She leaves me for another man. So I went and gotten back in Connorsville and hung out with my old friend Alex Magana. She was off to the races with meth. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's try it again. From December 2014 on, I was just lying to myself, lying to everybody else, saying that I had it under control. I could put it down when I needed to. And I would. I'd quit for like a month. It'd be cool, maybe 2 months, be straight, be cool, gravy train. Be like, I got this under control. Sure didn't. When everything finally boiled down to it, it was March of 2016. I was tired of being with the woman that I was with. She was absolutely a toxic person. We fed off each other's addiction. It was terrible. So I finally said I was done. Things were okay for about 3 months because they had to be. CPS was involved, and I had to stay sober and I had to pass drug tests so that way I could keep my kids in my life. Well, I passed all the drug tests just fine, but that wasn't it. And I thought that I was, making the worst decision of my life by divorcing her. So I didn't think that there was any way out of that choice. So April of 2016 rolls around, and I'm in a bar. I spent about $150 on Crown Royal and Mountain Dew in about an hour and a half. I was drinking to get it going. I left that bar. I told my friend Bo Sparks I got a 357 Sig waiting on me at the house. I'll see you boys later. I walked home. I had a van out in the parking lot. Don't know why I walked home. I was always the designated drunk driver, Everybody was like, oh, man, who's driving us home, man, because I can't do it. Corey will do it. I was always that guy. For some reason, I left my van there. I don't know why. But I started walking home. There was a guy named Josh Cheney. He was doing outreach for a church called the Apostolic Truth Tabernacle in Greensburg. It's a bit of a crazy person church, but they still represent Jesus. So they can't be all bad, and they saved my life. He says, He says, hey, man, you all right? I got tears streaming down my face. And I was bigger than I am now. I weighed 285 pounds at that point. I was a big dude, crying up. I wouldn't approach somebody like me crying in an alley, walking away like, that dude's got some issues. I'm going to keep on going. But Josh wasn't afraid of nothing, man. Josh said, hey, are you all right? Nope. And I kept on walking. He said, dude, I've been where you've been. I don't know how many of you, probably every single one of you, have heard somebody say, I've been where you've been. And doggone well that person they don't know a thing about where you've been and but what you've been through. But when I tell you, when Josh said, I've been where you've been, I believed him. Come to find out that Josh had gone through an entire life of drug addiction. He'd gone through, almost separation from his wife from his drug addiction, almost losing his kids, almost losing his life. So, yeah, he'd been where I've been, So when I was walking away, he said, man, I've been where you've been. And it stopped me. He said, can I pray for you? I said, but somebody needs to. He starts praying for me, and I was crying already. But when he started praying, I was hysterical. And he said, man, I don't feel like this is it. And I said, I don't either, man, because you know what I was on my way home to go do? I was on my way home to go kill myself. He said, well, we need to go to church. I said, when? He said, right now. Let's go. All right. It doesn't really sound like I got much of a choice. I'm drunk, walking home, crying. What else I got to lose? So I go to this church, and before knowing how they operate there, this is like apostolic. Before the service, they get up front on the altar, and they kneel like we do, and they pray out loud. They do it a little bit more eccentrically than we do. They're a little bit more. They're loud about it, So I went up there. I was crying. I was laughing like an idiot. Better words for it was like a child. And I've never felt, since then, I've only felt that 2 more times. And I'll tell you about them here in just a minute. For the next, about 2 more years after that, I struggled with addiction. Yeah, even though I had a miracle happen in my life and God saved my life and I felt Him save my life, it still didn't stop me, I caught my first felony in December of 2016. I was 30 years old. Whew. Went 30 years without catching one. And I caught 2 of them. Possession of methamphetamine, forgery. Should have been a whole lot more than that, but they knocked a whole bunch off. I don't know why. Well, I was on probation for a minute, and I was like, all right, I can juggle being an addict and being on probation. No, I can't. I can't juggle nothing and have an addiction at the same time. I can't juggle nothing and do meth. It just don't work like that. When I'm on meth, the only thing I think about is how to make money and get more. So, I went in for a drug test. I couldn't pee. So she was like, well, guess what? I'm going to violate you. They put a warrant out for my arrest, and they finally caught up with me, and then I went to jail. And then I don't understand why, but they OR'd me. And I was already a flight risk. They had a warrant out for me. They OR'd me. Whatever. So, I know what the answer to this is. I'm going to Indy. I'm going to disappear. Somewhere where I can hide in the shadows and they won't see me. I'll just slip right under the radar, boys. It could have been the death of me a couple times. Mike? March 21st, 2018. Me and my best friend Jacob. You know how they say you can't have friends when you're in an active addiction. That's not true, because he's still my friend today. My best friend Jacob and I, we were riding down the street in Ohio and Pershing in Indianapolis. We were both shot. I got shot here in the arm, went in there and came out here. The only reason why I was even shot, because I grabbed him and pulled him back in the car. If I wouldn't have grabbed him and pulled him back in the car, this is how I know Jesus is real. This is how I know God exists and miracles do happen, because I don't even remember doing that. But his aunt said she seen a miracle, like an alien force suck him back into the car, and he was only 87 pounds, and I'm me. So I grab him like this and I pull him back in the car. If I would have cowered like this, 2 inches, it would have been in my heart. I know Jesus exists because he saved my life that day, and he saved Jacob's. By me pulling him just that little bit, instead of taking him in the chest, I pulled him a little bit and it took him in the arm. It's amazing. Did it stop me? Nope. We were coming from court that day. That's the only way I really remember the date of it, you know. I was going to court. We got pulled over on the way to court. So we were going to drop that car off. That car in the front, that's a BMW 323 Ci. We were dropping it off two houses down and got shot. We were almost at our destination. We was there, you know. So that's what that is. That day, we left there. Went to the hospital. I went and got what I got, you know, did my drugs, went to the hospital. I started him on a whole new addiction. I go to the hospital, he's on the IV, and I'm like, hey, man, you already got one in your arm. Might as well let me put it in there. When I think about how big of a piece I was, you know, it makes me happy for today. So, that's that. That's that. Whew. Fast forward about 6 months, you know, and 4 felonies later. They finally catch up with me for my warrant down in Fayette County. I'd been arrested 5 other times, and Fayette County still hadn't talked to any other county to let them know, hey, we want this dude. So every time I went to jail in Marion County, they let me out on an OR, because that's what they do on drug offenses up there. They let you back into your addiction every time. So they finally caught up with me in June, or at the end of May. It was May 28th, 2018. The years are going by too fast now. I'm getting old. But it was May 28th, 2018. I finally get caught up and go and serve my time down in Fayette County. And it was a little 6-month bit. Get out January 2019. That's after 2 weeks being out. I weighed 191 pounds when I got out. Weighed 178 there. I didn't eat. You know, and I wanted to be that tough guy, because that guy didn't care about nothing. And that guy could get it done for you. And that guy could go kick in the door for you. That guy could go set somebody's house on fire for you. That guy could find you anything you want. That's the guy I wanted to be. That's the guy I thought I wanted to be. That guy still believed in Jesus. But he knew God was mad at him for the things that he was doing, so he didn't want to even talk to God. He didn't want to acknowledge God. I knew God existed. I knew him. I had a close personal relationship with him. Remember, he saved my life 2 years before this. So I knew he was there. I knew he was there the whole time. And I was still like, man, my bad. You know, kind of trying to tiptoe my way through life, hoping that I didn't stumble on something that was going to really condemn me bad, get me good. But I found out that God don't work like that. God don't work like that. He turned my mess into a message. That's Grant, and that's Jeremiah. Grant's on the right, Jeremiah's on the left. Only thing I was ever born to do was be a dad. It was the only thing I was ever born to do. You know, that and worship God and serve God. But I think that falls right back into being a dad, because I'm learning from my father how to be a father. July of this year rolls around. You know, March 3rd this year will be my 1 year. I'll have 1 year this year. When I decided to get sober in March of 2019, the first thing on my to-do list was these two kids, because I hadn't seen them in 2 years. 2 years because of the decisions I was making. Their mother was like, he is not coming near these kids ever. Ever. So that was the first thing on my to-do list. So as soon as I found out the only thing that I had to do was write a letter to the judge, I was all over it. I wrote the letter, went down there, they're like, wait a minute, you did something wrong, so you need to go back and do this. And I was like, I'll be back in an hour. Hand wrote it all out. Didn't use a computer, because I was walking from the courthouse to my mom's house, back to the courthouse, back to my mom's house, back to the courthouse, to the place where I got the envelopes with the stamps already on it, with the printed address for her address so they could send it to her, back and forth. So I didn't have time to go to the library to print anything out. You know how much the place that printed out the envelopes charged me? They usually charge like $1.50 a page to do whatever you want them to do, and then they charge you for the stamps, and then they charge you for the envelope. You know how much they charged me? Not a thing. Because I was on this kick, man. I still am on this kick. I don't care if I'm a drug addict or not. I'm going to tell you my story. Because God gave me my story. And now, if you're in my path, God's giving you my story. Because you're going to hear it. So I went in there and I was like, yeah, I'm fighting her to get my kids back. I don't really care, what I've got to go through. And she's like, well, you know what? You don't know me a thing. Here you go. You have a good day. I hope it works out. So, they're like, it's going to be about 90 days before you get a court date. Cool. It's been 2 years. I got 90 days to wait. 90 days ain't nothing. I can do that standing on my head. Put me in jail for 90 days. I'm cool. 90 days go by like that. My mom was freaking out like she had anything to do with it. She's still making bad decisions. She was like, you're not doing enough to see your kids. I said, Mom, I'm doing everything I can do, and God will work it out in his own time. I know he will. I've got faith in my God. But 3 months later, my court date comes up. I go in there, and he says, I said, well, I don't know how you didn't get the paperwork, but they continued your case out 90 more days. Or, I don't know. I think it was like another month or two or something. I don't remember the exact time. I walked out there. Okay, I'll see you then. It was September 13th when I was supposed to come back. And once again, my mom was like, oh my God, it isn't true. I said, Mom, it's 2 more months. It's only, you saw him in December of 2019. I haven't seen him since July of 2017. I got this. He's got me. It's cool. We're going places. So that rolls around. We get into court. She's sitting there. I'm sitting over here. Smile on my face. I'm looking at Judge Bailey. He's looking back at me. I can see it in his face. He's going to tell me I'm going to get my kids. I know he will. So he looks at her and he says, there will never be a day in my courtroom that I will ever keep a child from a dad that's trying. This man is trying. You will give him his rights. So that was about, I don't know, there was a couple like, we need to slow this down, and you'll see him on good time. And it was the 30-minute visit here, 30-minute visit here, but 30 minutes was heaven to me. The first time it was crazy. Tore my heart out because they didn't really want to talk to me because they didn't know who I was. Grant's always been a mama's boy. I never really got a daddy's boy out of him. But I still loved him to pieces because he was my special kid. I always told him that. He was always my special little boy because he taught me how to be a dad. Jerry, that was my daddy's boy. I finally got blessed with a daddy's boy. And anything I wanted to do, he was right there. And anything I did, he thought was the coolest. I don't have either one of them anymore. Now they still love me. They don't really know me very well anymore. But we're getting there. Back in it was 2017. It was the beginning part of 2017. That beautiful woman right there. She was pregnant with that small one that's in my arms. I rode with her. I was still up to no good, and she was doing good, And I was riding in her car with dope in my pocket. I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" I bet you I could make all your dreams go rotten. Well, she's like, "Well, you sound good. I'm gonna give you my fake phone number." So she gives me a fake phone number. Me. You know how many times I thought about that moment for the next 2 years? I thought about it like 87 times while I was locked up for 6 months in Fayette County Jail. I was like, man, I can't remember that chick that gave me a fake number. Oh, why did she do that? She was pretty cute. Pretty cute. Anyways, so I started going to Lifeline Wesleyan Church. I didn't start going there. I started going back to Celebrate Recovery in Greensberg, Indiana. And I really started to find my wind. I started picking up wind in my sail. I started gaining momentum for where I'm at now, And I keep on saying, I seen her there one time, and then I hung out with Billy Austin, he is who he is. I love him to death, and I kind of can't stand him at the same time. He's one of those guys. I love him to pieces. I'll do anything I can to help him out. But when he calls, I'm like, oh, this guy. Now, Billy's one of my really good friends now. We go through 12 steps together. And I'm proud of the person that he is, and he's proud of the person that I am. There was a time where neither one of us would pick up the phone if the other one answered, because we didn't like each other that much. And it was just because we were in different parts of our journey. And now that we're both living our lives 100% for Jesus, there's no other way to be. You know what I mean? How can I not like Jason if he's doing the same thing that I'm doing? If he's on the same path that I am, we're both trying to save lives. We have 5 kids, the 2 of us now. 5 of them. That's a lot every other weekend. But, they drive me crazy in such a beautiful way. I can't even tell you. I can't imagine my life without those people anymore. And it's crazy that now that I have Jesus in my life, I feel the same way about Jesus as I do about them, even more so. Because if I didn't have God, I wouldn't have them. If I didn't have God, I wouldn't have the shoes on my feet that are stained with the work that I do. He's given me every piece of work that I could ever need. I got laid off in December 18th. I really wasn't that worried. She might have been a little bit. I really wasn't that worried. I knew God was going to take care of me. I put every piece of my faith in Jesus. I do it every day. People started calling me. Jeff Rumsey, the guy we go to church with, called me and said, hey, man, I got a house that I need remodeled. I said, I know a guy. And I can do all of that. He had me remodel his house. That got me through the first 2 months. Now I'm having my landlord, who is a person who's now my landlord, said, hey, I got a house for you to work on. I said, all right, cool. So I go over here and work on this house. I'm like, man, that's a nice house. Man, it's a really nice house. Do you have anybody in mind to rent this place? She said, no. I said, I do. God puts things in my steps now that prospers me, prospers my family, because I put all my trust in Him. I put all my faith and in my happiness, my goals. I leave it all to Jesus. So He takes me where I need to be. And it's amazing. So when I came in here, I can't remember who it was. I don't remember what your name is. But she said, you're glowing. I said, I'm always like this. Unless I'm not. And then that just means I'm like in a funk. Those two guitars up there, they have a story. In June of 2019, I had a job. No, it wasn't June. It was March of 2019. I had a job. Everything was cool. You know, I still hadn't bought myself nothing except for shoes, maybe some pants. The first thing I bought myself with my money after I quit drugs was that guitar. That guitar, just about 2 months ago, a friend of ours from church, his name is George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman he's one of the nicest, kindest guys. He does the sound at our church. He's an amazing dude. Calls me up out of nowhere and he says, hey, man, what are you doing? I said, nothing. I thought you were in Florida. He said, I was. I'm just up here for my sister's funeral. Hey, can you meet me at Melody Mart in 15 minutes? I was like, yeah, sure. Go up there, and the people in the store were like, hey, man, I got these guitars he was checking out. He just wants you to pick whichever one you like. What? He's going to buy me a guitar? He bought me that guitar to play at CR because me and my wife are the music directors for Celebrate Recovery in Greensberg. Yeah, right on. I don't know where you're at in life. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm at in life. But I know where I'm going. I know where I'll be. Amen. I know where my wife's going to be. We live our lives the best we can, and I want you to live your life the best that you can. So the best advice that I can give anybody, if there's anything that you can learn from me at all, is trust. Trust God, because He will prosper you. He will take care of you, and He will give you everything that you ever thought you could need, and then some. My name is Corey. Thank you.
I can't do it. We're going to go down. Go me fine. Let's pull the...